Something extraordinary happened as 3I/ATLAS passed the Sun, and NASA's silence is deafening. This interstellar visitor suddenly ejected 7 massive jets, some stretching 23,000 kilometers into space. The violence was so extreme, scientists estimate it burned through 13% of its mass in mere hours. Here's what makes this shocking. Some jets aimed toward the Sun, defying everything we know about comets. Amateur photographers captured stunning details that NASA's billion-dollar instruments somehow missed. Harvard's AV Loeb even raised the possibility of a techno-signature. The data is real. The images are undeniable. So why did NASA issue a bland statement that ignored every critical anomaly? Let's dive right in. Here's where this story gets uncomfortable. While NASA released their statement about 3I/ATLAS on October 30th, with grainy, low-resolution images, something remarkable was happening in backyards across the world. Amateur astronomers, people with equipment you could buy online and set up in your driveway, were capturing images that should have been impossible. Ben Frederick, using a ZWO telescope, a setup you could literally fit in your car trunk, photographed 3I/ATLAS with stunning clarity, showing individual outgassing plumes in exquisite detail. Michael Yeager and Frank Niebling captured images revealing 7 distinct jets erupting from the nucleus, each stretching over 20,000 kilometers into space. To give you perspective, you could line up 2 planet Earths end to end and still not match the length of a single plume. Now think about that. Hobbyists with personal telescopes were outperforming NASA's billion-dollar infrastructure. The agency had Hubble, James Webb, the Psyche spacecraft, stereo satellites, and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter all tracking this object. Yet NASA's sharpest image, from the high-rise camera on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, shows a nucleus so blurry it's reduced to just a couple of pixels. When amateur astronomers are getting better results than billion-dollar instruments, we need to ask why. Because the images exist, the data exists, the question is what NASA chooses to share, and more importantly, what they choose to explain. Let's talk about those 7 jets, because this is where the physics stops making sense. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb analyzed the images and mapped the vectors. What he found should be impossible. 3 of those jets were aimed directly at the Sun, not away from it, toward it. This violates one of the most basic principles in planetary science. Comet tails always point away from the Sun because the solar wind pushes gas and dust particles outward. It's as fundamental as gravity. Yet here we have massive jets of diatomic carbon shooting toward the Sun with enough velocity to overcome the solar wind entirely. The force required is staggering. Scientists estimate 3I/ATLAS burned through 13% of its total mass to generate these plumes. Typical comets lose less than 1% during perihelion. This was an event of extraordinary, almost violent intensity. But direction is only part of the mystery. The structure is equally baffling. 3I/ATLAS is tumbling with a 16-hour rotation period. If these jets were simply passive outgassing from surface vents, they should appear curved, like water from a spinning sprinkler. Yet these jets are linear, straight as arrows, extending tens of thousands of kilometers without curvature. The only way to produce that structure from a rotating object is if the material was ejected in discrete, timed bursts rather than continuous flow. That requires either incredibly precise geological activity that happens to sync perfectly with rotation, or something actively controlling the timing. Loeb hasn't shied away from the implications. He suggested this pattern could represent a techno-signature, evidence of artificial control. Before you dismiss that, understand who's saying it. Loeb is the former chair of Harvard's astronomy department, with over 1,000 peer-reviewed papers. When someone with those credentials raises the possibility of artificial origins, it deserves serious consideration, not silence. And here's what makes the silence deafening. We've never seen a natural comet behave this way in centuries of observation. Every comet we've studied follows predictable patterns. 3I/ATLAS is breaking all those rules simultaneously. While everyone focused on those impossible jets, another anomaly was quietly unfolding. During perihelion in late September, 3I/ATLAS became 4 times brighter than predictions. But brightness alone wasn't the strangest part. The object fundamentally changed color. When it first entered the inner solar system in July, it appeared dark red, consistent with carbon-rich material. As it approached perihelion, it shifted to green from diatomic carbon outgassing. Then, during maximum brightness, it turned distinctly blue. Bluer than the sun itself, according to analysis by researchers Ken Zhang and Carl Battams. Their published paper states, "The comet appears distinctly bluer than the sun, in contrast to earlier observations showing the comet's dust to be red, suggesting that gas emissions likely from diatomic carbon and possibly nickel hydride and molecular hydrogen contribute to a sizable fraction of the overall visible brightness." Translation: this object fundamentally transformed its observable composition as it heated up. Comets don't reinvent their chemical signatures mid-flight. They don't shift through the color spectrum like they're changing clothes. Yet that's exactly what 3I/ATLAS did. So, what did NASA say about all this? They confirmed the approach, showed blurry images, acknowledged it was interstellar. But regarding the jets, the brightness surge, the color transformation, their statement mentioned interesting anomalies without elaborating. It was scientific no comment. Compare this to NASA's typical enthusiasm. When Comet Neowise appeared in 2020, they published detailed analyses, hosted webinars, flooded social media with explanations. For 3I/ATLAS, our second ever confirmed interstellar visitor, we got a brief statement and low-quality images weeks after the event. The timing raises questions too. Punch satellite images from September 20th to October 3rd weren't released until mid-November, weeks after amateur astronomers had already published their observations. Lucy spacecraft footage from late September only became available in late October. Why hold back data when amateur observers are already sharing findings in real time? 3I/ATLAS isn't alone. Comet C/2024 R2SWAN recently developed an anti-tail, a plume aimed at the sun, overcoming solar wind just like 3I/ATLAS. The astronomer's telegram confirmed SWAN is ejecting material at impossible velocities. And like 3I/ATLAS, it's turned intensely green from diatomic carbon outgassing. Then there's C/2024 K1 Atlas, breaking apart as it plunges toward the sun. Imaging shows 4 distinct fragments following different trajectories. This is normal cometary death, showing us what typical destruction looks like, a baseline for comparison. And just weeks ago, amateur astronomer Gennady Borisov, who discovered 2I/Borisov, our first interstellar comet, found C/2025 V1 Borisov. It has an orbital eccentricity of 1.0095, right at the boundary between bound and unbound. It's on a retrograde path inclined 113 degrees to the ecliptic, with an estimated 69,000-year orbital period. Despite passing perihelion November 16th, it shows almost no dust tail. 4 unusual comets in 4 months, each challenging standard models, each raising unanswered questions. The MAVEN spacecraft orbiting Mars detected 3I/ATLAS via hydrogen emissions in ultraviolet spectrum. NASA's own instrument confirmed massive hydrogen loss consistent with the brightness surge. That's objective, measurable data. Psyche spacecraft images from September 8th to 9th showed the coma spanning 13,000 kilometers. Lucy spacecraft images from late September showed it had expanded to span 11 arc-minutes of sky, 13 times wider. This documented rapid expansion as it heated up. But that high-rise image from 30 million kilometers away should have easily measured the nucleus. Instead, it's just a couple of pixels. What if the nucleus is significantly smaller than predicted? What if all that massive outgassing came from a tiny object? That would require either impossibly high volatile concentration or an internal energy source beyond solar heating. Either option breaks our understanding of cometary physics. Why didn't NASA's press release discuss jet directionality? Why no analysis of the 400% brightness anomaly? Why release low-quality imagery after amateurs publish superior observations? And why hasn't NASA responded to Loeb's techno-signature suggestion? The data is public. Scientists worldwide are publishing findings. The conversation is happening with or without NASA. Yet, the world's most prominent space agency seems content to let amateurs drive the narrative about one of the most significant astronomical discoveries of our generation. When NASA landed Perseverance, they flooded channels with explanations and celebrations. When Ingenuity flew, they explained everything they were seeing. Where's that enthusiasm for 3I/ATLAS? Where's the eagerness to educate? Careful words usually mean one of two things. Either they know something they're not ready to share, or they don't know something they think they should. Neither looks good. 3I/ATLAS is heading back out, accelerating as the sun's gravity releases. By early 2026, it'll be too faint to track. We have maybe 6 months before it disappears for another 80,000 years, if it ever returns. Will NASA release higher resolution imagery their instruments captured? Will they explain the jet mechanism, the brightness surge, the color transformation? Or will they let these questions fade as attention moves on, leaving real work to independent scientists and amateur observers without bureaucratic constraints? Because right now, the people without billion-dollar budgets are doing the most interesting work, and that should tell you everything about where real discoveries are happening. Here's the bottom line. An interstellar visitor just performed maneuvers that defy known physics. It fired jets toward the sun, changed color completely, and brightened 4 times beyond predictions. Amateur astronomers captured stunning details while NASA released blurry images and avoided the real questions. This isn't conspiracy. It's documented, peer-reviewed data. 7 linear jets from a tumbling object, material overcoming solar wind, a 400% brightness surge. These are facts that challenge everything we thought we knew about comets. And the most telling part? Backyard telescopes are outperforming billion-dollar agencies. That shows you where real discoveries are happening, not in carefully worded press releases, but with passionate observers unafraid to share what they see. So here's what I need. If this gave you a new perspective, hit that like button now. Drop a comment with your theory. Are these jets natural phenomena we don't understand, or something more? Subscribe to Galactic Breaking News and smash that notification bell. We're tracking these objects in real time, breaking down data NASA won't explain. We've got deep dives coming on R2, SWAN's anti-tail, and new interstellar findings mainstream channels ignore. Share this with anyone who thinks space news is boring, because what's happening right now is extraordinary. The universe is revealing its secrets. Are you paying attention? See you in the next one.